hiking. Yeah. All right. I want you all to close your eyes. Imagine you are at the top of a mountain. We're at about 11,000 feet. We're above the tree line. It's windy, it's cold, probably about 20 degrees, but it feels way colder with the breeze. Can you imagine anything living up here? How could something survive in a place so desolate? So my name is Kevin Norris. I am going to be talking to you today about wild places on the top of the mountains, on the slopes, on the sides, all about mountain ecosystems. I'm from the Sierra Club, an organization that includes a lot of people who love hiking and going up into the mountains. We have a chapter here in Wisconsin, even though we do not quite have the mountains that you'll see here in this presentation today. Mountains may strike most people as a very cold and desolate place, like I said. Very hard to reach, the conditions are extreme, and yet life finds a way. Mountain ecosystems are these wild and dynamic places where life has adapted to a unique set of challenges. Like I said, my name is Kevin Norris. I am a big avid hiker, so some of the photos you're seeing here, some of them I've taken myself. But to start, we're just going to talk about the conditions of mountain ecosystems, what makes them so unique, what sets them apart. It's generally agreed upon mountains are kind of anything above 2,000 feet. It generally depends on the surrounding area. If you have what you would call a lot of relief or a lot of difference in elevation from where the slope starts and where the top is. So like here in Wisconsin, we're at about a couple hundred feet above sea level, pretty level. But once you start getting up into like Colorado, like Denver, the city of Denver itself is about 5,000 feet. However, the tops of those mountains above Denver are about 13,000 feet, some of them. So there's a good 7,000 feet of difference between where the city is and where the tops of the mountains are. And as you start moving up into the mountains, you actually start to experience different kinds of habitat types, different ecosystems. They vary. It's not all just one big kind of forest or a big rocky exposed slope. So at the bottom, you have your just kind of basic foothill woodlands, a lot of like deciduous forests that we see here, your maples, your oaks, trees like that. As you start getting up there a little bit, you get what they call chaparral, which is kind of more grassland, shrubby. And then you start working your way into the lower montane forest, where you're going to see more of your oaks, you're going to see more of your pines, things like that. And then as you start going into the upper montane forest, you start getting some of those firs, some of those other trees that are more adapted to those really high elevations. Then as you're near the top and you're basically at about where the tree line is going to stop, where the tree line is going to be, you get those subalpine forests, which have more spruce, subalpine fir, mountain hemlock, species that are not quite as tall and are a little more adapted for, again, those extreme conditions up there. Once you start getting kind of above 7,000 to 8,000 feet, trees start dropping off. There's not a lot of precipitation, so it's a lot harder for them to survive. They're also just exposed to sun, to wind, conditions like that. And then when you get to the top, there's really not a whole lot. There might be some mosses, lichen, there might be some small plants like that. But it's really down at the bottom that you're going to see those beautiful wildflower meadows, those beautiful pine forests that are kind of what most people think of when they think of the mountain forest. And then you start working your way up, and you get into that lower montane forest, you might have some firs, some Douglas fir. If you're out west, trees like that. You'll have ferns and lots of things growing along the canopy. Now you're starting to get into the subalpine forest, it's starting to thin out, and you see more of those spruce, those thinner trees that are adapted to drier conditions, windier conditions. And then you start getting on the top of the mountain, the rocky exposed parts. You're at maybe 8,000 to 9,000 feet, and believe it or not, there's actually small shrubs and things that will grow up there too. This is bearberry, I believe. You can see all these different lichens that are just hanging out on the rocks. They do pretty well up there. This is another photo that just kind of explains some of those differences a little better, kind of gives you that idea as you're moving up in elevation, how the vegetation types will change. You'll hear the term tree line a lot, and what that is kind of that area. It varies, and it can be 4,000 to 7,000 feet, but that's that area where trees will no longer be able to grow. That gives you a really good, clear image of it there. Like I said, the tree line actually varies depending on what part of the country you're in, how high in latitude you are. As you get further north, the tree line actually is lower because of just the polar conditions and whatnot. So like out in Maine, up in the northern Appalachians, the tree line can be as low as 4,000 feet, but out west it's more common to see it between 7,000 and 11,000 feet. Once you get up there above the tree line, you will see what are a lot of people's favorites. They're one of my personal favorites. These are the American pika. So when you get up into the mountains, like I said, a lot of people think of it as a very desolate place, but there's actually a lot of different kinds of life that have adapted to live up there and have really kind of unique set of characteristics that make life possible there. So these guys, they live above the tree line, and they love those rocky areas, kind of like you had seen in that previous photo, where they can hide in the little nooks and crannies and stay safe from predators. That's one I took myself. They'll make that high-pitched squeaking noise you heard at the beginning to warn the other pika if there's a predator coming along, or just a hiker. And what they do, as you can see in the previous photo, they do this really cool thing called haying, where they'll actually go and collect vegetation from around the part of the mountain they live on and take it back to their little burrow, and they'll stash food that way, and then they'll have a good reserve of food for the more difficult, colder months ahead. Another animal that does really well up there is a marmot. These guys are kind of related to groundhogs, woodchucks, things like that, but they're kind of like their mountain cousin. They are like the pika, they're vegetation eaters. They can kind of make do with a lot of different types of vegetation, the more sparse shrubs and plants and things that grow up on top of the mountains. And they also like to just kind of hang out, look around, try to find something good to eat, warn their other little friends if something's coming along that could try to eat them. A lot of hawks and eagles out in the mountains. They love flying around the mountains because the wind, the drafts that come up the mountain actually give them a good amount of lift, so it makes it really easy for them to soar. And then they can also see all throughout that valley and see if there's anything little tasty guys like that. You also have mountain goats, which are some people's favorite. Some people aren't as big a fan of them. I think they're pretty cool. As long as you give them enough space, they'll usually pass you on the trail, and their hooves can take up an area the size of a quarter if they needed, so they can leap from rock to rock and really land in those really tiny, difficult spots that we might not be able to. The hooves also have kind of these special, really tiny grooves that you can't really see as well with your naked eye, but that's what helps them grip onto the rocks really well. And another thing that helps them get away from predators. So if you're a bear and you're trying to chase something for food and it just starts going pretty much straight up a rock wall, you're probably going to turn around and go look for something else. So that works out really well for the mountain goats. Mountains are beautiful, wild places. They're places many people love to go. But it takes a lot of preparation to be up there, and there's a lot of other things you need to consider too, because they're also very special and very easily disturbed habitats for those animals that we were just talking about. So one of the biggest things is when you're hiking is to make sure you're leaving no trace. Make sure that when you're up there, that everything you have, you're going to pack back out. And that is a huge thing, because if you go somewhere like Mount Everest, other places like that, which are super popular for camping, there's giant trash heaps up there. How do you get trash down from 7,000, 8,000 feet, 10,000 feet? People didn't pack it in, pack out. There's not as much regulation as there should be there. But in our national parks, that's a big thing you'll see when you talk with the rangers. The other thing you need to be prepared for is conditions. Conditions can change way quickly, faster than you would believe. I mean, in this photo, it could have been thunderstorming 2 minutes ago, for all you know. And I've seen it happen up there. The weather up there can be unpredictable and can be dangerous. In the summer, lightning is a huge risk, which is why most hikers will try to finish their hikes by about noon or 1 o'clock and get back below the tree line. There is nothing other than you to attract lightning when you're up there. There is not another tree, there is not another object for that lightning to seek. It's going to seek you. So that's a big thing, is just checking your conditions, making sure before you get up there that you are going to be not exposing yourself to super dangerous weather, and then also being prepared for when those conditions do change, because thunderstorms could roll in, or a snowstorm, or a blinding fog, all kinds of things. So layers are a huge one. You can see she's got a couple different layers. Some of them are pretty lightweight and breathable. That's going to be really important too, because you're going to be working up quite a sweat, and you don't want all of that to be trapped and make cold and clammy later. But again, if the snowstorm blows in, you've got to be ready to also bundle up and get ready for that. And traction devices are a huge one too. Once you get up there, it's very easy to slip. There's not a lot that you can really break your feet on, especially if you're up on a snowfield or somewhere where there's a lot of ice. Because year-round, there's snow and ice up there. So having some kind of traction device, whether that's just the grips that you can put on your shoes, or if there's actual snowshoes you want to attach. And lastly, making sure you have hiking poles. They are going to really help you out, especially if you're about to slip, or if you're unsteady, or you're just trying to get between two areas that may have a big difference in elevation, something you can use to steady yourself. So that's a big one. Mountains are cool. We all love them. They're wild, unique places where life is adapted to a unique set of challenges. Whether that's the animals that go there, that live there, the people like us that go up there and hike, we have found ways to do it. But it is important to plan, and it's important to make sure that you are not impacting those beautiful landscapes that you go to visit. So I hope if you ever get the chance, you go, you experience the beauty of the mountains, you do it safe and responsibly, but you also have a good time like I did 2 summers ago. Thank you.